Print servers in federal environments create risk and unnecessary complexity. Every new printer, location, or policy adds strain to infrastructure that was never built for today's demands. FedRAMP High Authorized Printer Logic eliminates print servers with a secure cloud-native, zero-trust solution designed for federal IT. With advanced security, centralized control, and simplified management, agencies can modernize print without added burden. See what secure serverless printing looks like. Visit Vasion.com to learn more.
Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The price tag for the Pentagon's ambitious Golden Dome missile system has become a point of contention between the Defense Department and the Congressional Budget Office. CBO says the vision laid out by President Trump last year could cost taxpayers at least $1.2 trillion over 2 decades. But Pentagon officials have pushed back on that estimate and questioned some of the assumptions behind it. Federal News Network's Rachel Cohen joins me now to break down the differences. Rachel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Terry.
So talk to us about the difference. What is in CBO's estimate that the Pentagon objects to?
Yeah, so, like you just said, their cost estimate is $1.2 trillion. Where they differ is CBO looked at the executive order from last year that, envisioned a sweeping network of, space-based interceptors and, current tech and, a lot of various pieces that aren't necessarily, in use already. And so they estimated it as sort of this notional system. And the Pentagon is saying, look, you don't know what we're making. It's not that, it's not as, overarching, not quite as sprawling as what you think it is. And they don't want people to get as much sticker shock as CBO may be giving people.
So presumably the Pentagon would have given CBO a description of what they were building. Did CBO have to make some assumptions here?
They have not given CBO any briefings. The head of CBO's National Security Division said, we've asked for briefings and they won't do them. So that makes you kind of just have to rely on existing research, existing knowledge of things that are already out there. So, how much does it cost to build and field Patriot? How much does it cost to build and field command and control systems that would need to connect this kind of stuff? So General Gutlein, who's the Golden Dome program manager, he said yesterday, you can't just take a system that already exists and multiply it enough times to cover the whole U.S. and say, yes, that's the cost estimate. But without more details on what DoD is actually going after, that's kind of what CBO has had to do.
What do we know about what the Pentagon actually plans for Golden Dome?
Very little. So they're kind of walking the fine line between it is one of the Trump administration's highest priority projects, but it's something that they have released very, very little about, despite kind of wanting to throw it out there as a fun big term. So they're looking at things like, how do we connect all of the, sort of missile defense, air defense types of things, radars, sensors, various missile batteries. How do we connect what the U.S. already has to create, sort of this prototype that would stretch over, at least the continental U.S. and, how it would cover other parts, if it would cover parts of Canada, how it would shield Alaska, Hawaii, if it would shield American bases overseas, things like that. That's that kind of stuff hasn't been made public. But, Gutlein yesterday said, we got $22.5 billion from Congress this year, and we've got radars on contract. We have space-based interceptors on contract. We have, locations on contract. And so they're moving out.
Is CBO releasing its own estimate one way to try to force the Pentagon's hand here to be more transparent? I mean, how unusual is it to see this kind of public disagreement between the Pentagon and CBO over a cost estimate?
I don't know if they're doing it to force their hand necessarily. I think it's one of the administration's kind of pet projects, one of their highest priorities, especially for defense. It's driven a lot of the discussion around defense spending the last couple of years. And, their job is to kind of present it and say, look, like, here's this idea, here's what we think it will cost taxpayers. I think the difference is typically they have a little more interaction with the program offices that build this kind of thing. I think in a lot of cases, think about something like the B-21 bomber, right? A very, very highly classified program, but they can extrapolate sort of off of existing bomber programs, right? So when it comes to something like space-based interceptors, which we don't already have, the tech wasn't there during, Reagan's Star Wars initiative. It wasn't really mature enough, scalable enough. There's more that I think they need to do from scratch. So it's just a little harder for them to guess.
What does this disagreement at the bottom line numbers mean for Congress as it's trying to decide how much money to give the Pentagon for the Golden Dome program?
Without more information on what Golden Dome actually is, what it actually entails, what they've done so far, they could be getting bits and pieces through classified briefings. But, if not, they're basically saying, yes, we believe in what you're doing. We believe that you're making the right choices. And, here's the money that you say you need. So, their question going forward is going to be, is this an initiative that they want to keep putting into packages like reconciliation, where they can pass without Republicans can pass without any votes from Democrats? Or, how do you fold that into the base budget if there at some point becomes a Congress where Republicans aren't in charge? How do you continue funding that? So I think one issue is the transparency in Congress, agreeing to fund something that they aren't, sure of all the details on, and whether they decide to do that, the vehicle that they do that through, and then what the future of that kind of funding looks like, because, the vast majority of the funding so far has been through reconciliation.
That's Federal News Network's Rachel Cohen. Rachel, thanks for bringing us this story. There's certainly a lot to watch here.
Yep. Thank you.
You can find her story at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive.